You're listening to Out Cincinnati on 91.7 WVXU HD 21660 AM in Northside and anytime at OUTCincinnati.com. But the easiest way to listen is right there on the Cincinnati Public Radio app. How's it going, Melissa?
Hey, Chris. It is going right here in Cincinnati.
Yeah, we've been talking oh, no, you were going to ask me a question. Yeah, you said that. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you, who do we have on this week's show? Because I heard that there is a film festival going on again. I know we talked about the Dayton Independent Film Festival last week, which I don't know if you got to see some of the films there, but I did, and they were really, really good. I was impressed.
And it was interesting to do a hybrid deal where most of them were online, and then they had an in-person event at the end of the weekend, just to be able to sit there and I don't know, react out loud. That was a strange thing for me because you can react at a film festival, but you can't be like, that sucked.
Oh, no, yeah, because if you're in private, you can be like, oh, my gosh.
Or like, fast forward this,
that was dumb. Or like, yeah, I know what you mean.
But we didn't, I did none of that. So the Dayton LGBT
some
film,
people do it in the movie theater.
Oh, so you can, and so I had a mess of popcorn.
It's like the Rocky Horror Show, you know.
Yeah,
so,
15th annual Dayton LGBT Film Festival. I'll get more details with Jonathan from the director of the film festival, but it's October 9th through 15th, and it is almost all online, one in-person event. We'll get more details on that. This week we'll also talk to somebody who I actually was in some French classes with years ago, who I've kind of followed on Facebook, and they are active in the community. I wanted to talk to them about it. So Key Beck is going to join us, and we're going to find out what they're up to on this episode of Out Cincinnati. Look, I said episode.
Hey there, this is Jonathan McNeal with the Dayton LGBT Film Festival. This year's festival is October 9th through the 15th, and you can find out all about it on our website, DaytonLGBT.com.
You're listening to Out Cincinnati on 91.7 WVXU HD2 and 1660 AM anytime at OUTCincinnati.com. The Dayton LGBT Film Festival is at its 15th year, and Jonathan McNeal is the festival director. He's on the phone. Thanks for being here. How's it going?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Asking how things are going. I run a cinema here in Dayton, so it's pretty slow. And we're glad that we can move forward with the festival, but mostly in a virtual way this year.
Yeah, I was gonna ask how it's kind of changed. 15 years, and then all of a sudden we have this kind of more than a weird set of circumstances. How has the festival taken that on?
Well, we were back in the spring is when we always start to look at new material, and kind of around the March, early April window, and once we were getting ready to do that again, and we decided as a committee, I put the word out there, it looks like a lot of festivals are canceling or completely transitioning to a different mode of operation. What do you folks want to do? And it was unanimous that in year 15 that it was important that we move forward and find a way to make it happen, and that as we went on and looked at more films, we knew that virtual was probably going to be the only way we could really make it happen. But we also knew that, a lot of people are, at home and feeling disconnected in a whole different level, and we felt it was all the more important that we at least have a presence this year.
Right, to have folks be able to watch from home. So that's the thing this year. You do have an in-person event, right? But most of the films are available via the internet during a certain time frame. Is that right?
That's right. So we have 7 selections total, 7 packages of films, and 6 of those are available only online. And those will have some bells and whistles occasionally with, intros from our committee members and occasional Q&A with a filmmaker associated with one of the films, one of the packages. But then that 7th package, which is Top Drawer Shorts number 2, shorts of gained in popularity over the years, and the last several years have always been a sellout for us. So we have the one package of shorts virtually and a second package of entirely different shorts that will play in person here. And because our seating is so diminished at the Neon due to the pandemic, we decided let's offer it 4 times so that we could ostensibly have like one sellout between all 4 screenings. So, because we're at about 25% capacity when we have a quote sold out show these days.
I heard there was a great video you did on the festival's Facebook page, really instructive about how to go about tickets, and I suggest people look that up, because if you have any questions about spacing, or because you definitely have done it with the 3 seats, spacing out kind of thing. What has that done to the? I mean, obviously that's strange in the theater. Like, is that a permanent thing? What has that done to your normal screenings?
Well, we have fewer screenings a day so that we can get in and clean properly and make sure that everyone's out. We have adequate time to clean before the next patrons would even start to arrive, because we don't want congregating in the lobby anymore, which is something we used to value. Now we, want people to take their seats as soon as they grab their snacks and, are here. So we have fewer shows a day, bigger breaks in between shows. We have set up our lobby in a whole different way. So there's a dedicated space for box office. There's a dedicated space to buy your concessions, and a dedicated space to pick up your concessions. So we have more staff on hand than we've ever had before, and so we're spending a lot more to make a lot less. So it's certainly a big challenge.
I miss going to the normal theater, and maybe I don't miss being around all those people, but it's nice to get back in. So between the 9th and the 15th, and then the in-person event is at the Neon at the end of the festival, right?
No, it's actually 4 different days throughout that week. So there's a Saturday at noon, a Sunday at 4, a Monday at 7, and a Wednesday at 7. So definitely a lot of different time opportunities in addition to different days there. So we've spaced it out in hopes that people can find one that suits their schedules.
And Jonathan McNeal is the director of the Dayton LGBT Film Fest. Between our program here in Cincinnati and the film fests we have here and the film fests in Dayton and in Ohio regionally, for folks who aren't familiar with like the film fest scene, why should folks check out this one? What's different about, or not different about an LGBT film fest, but what's the attraction? What's different about these films?
Well, we've been at it for 15 years here. We look at films from around the world and curate, what we think is really a concise and strong, powerful, diverse lineup. And the thing is, sometimes you get to a festival and they're just too big and they're overwhelming. And, I did the festival circuit for a year plus with a film of my own years ago. And there were some films where some festivals that were just, 10, 12 days and, 15, 20 selections a day that you could choose from, that kind of thing. And you just can, small films can get lost, right, and gems can get lost in the mix and in the shuffle. So, I feel like this is uber curated. There's really good material here, and we've really scoured to find what we think is the best.
And you were talking about you folks really are drawn to the shorts. Do you have a feeling why that is? I love them because you watch 10 in an afternoon. Well, 10's a lot, but
right.
Why do folks love them? Do you think?
No, I feel like it's a different kind of storytelling, and it's we've become a little more invested in the short format lately. There are a lot of shows on Hulu and other platforms where an episode might be like 16 minutes or 18 minutes of a show. So we're not so married to that idea that a story needs to take 2 hours to tell. And I think it's a different kind of technique, and when done well, they can be just as powerful as a feature-length film.
And what are the themes present in this year's shorts? And I want to know kind of the same thing about the films you're offering during the virtual selections. Without doing all the different synopses, what are kind of the themes present this year?
There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of celebration this year. I feel like, certainly protagonists encounter challenges, but I feel like overall, as a festival, we're seeing a lot of celebration. I mean, Keyboard Fantasies is a documentary that's really great about a trans artist who's been rediscovered and is experiencing a new life years later, both physically and artistically, and it's just a great story. So I feel like that one really speaks to a lot of people, and we're getting ready to do a Q&A with the director and producer of that documentary. So that will be part of this streaming virtually when people tune in.
And you have other themes. What was the film with the Middle Eastern theme represented that reminded me of a film I saw years? See how much fun it is to link them up. Which one was that? Was that Shiva?
Breaking Fast, I think.
Oh, yeah, Breaking Fast. Okay.
Right. So that is a film that's playing, really doing the festival circuit this year. It's about a Muslim who lives in West Hollywood, and the film starts with a breakup. I'm not giving too much away because it's really in the first 5 minutes. A breakup, and he's learning to live, his life after having his world shattered. And he meets an American guy who, he offers to, break fast with during the holy holidays. So, he's supposed to be fasting, and he's breaking fast with this guy. And it's a charming kind of rom-com-esque kind of film, and I feel like it's one that we think is really accessible. And we also thought, if we were doing the festival live, this is the type of film that we'd kick off the series with, because it's it kind of puts you in a good mood for the rest of the weekend.
And you can see the whole list for the Dayton LGBT Film Festival. It's DaytonLGBT.com. Is there a silly film in this year's festival? When I say that,
oh yeah.
Okay, which one?
Well, silly. I mean, there are definitely some shorts that bill.
So like a funny gay prom or My Gay Movie or whatever. They have like a silly night. Nothing that silly.
Nothing. No feature film that's that silly. They all have a tinge of seriousness about them. There are some that have like a really great punchline. That there's a short that do I want to talk about it? Is so uber short. It's really only a few minutes, but the writing is great. The performances are great. I'm not 100% sure. I need to re-explore, but I think it's only one shot too, and it's just perfect. And it's part of the in-screening series, in-person series called I Know Her. The series is called Top Drawer Shorts Volume 2, but that short is called I Know Her, and that's great. There's also another little doc within that program called The Shawl, which is animated, and it's about two men and their infatuation and mutual infatuation with Stevie Nicks, and about a particular concert that they attended. And so it's an interview, so we get like the interview kind of quality of them narrating the story, but it's animated, and it's just really fantastic.
And I think it is super really cool that you pulled something together, but it is so hard. Everything's been a little harder, over the last 6 months or so, and to have an event this year, the Dayton LGBT Film Festival. I just learned of a festival that was canceling the other day, so to put these films out there. How should folks because what I do is I get the schedule, I read up on stuff, and I end up learning too much, and I, get lost. How should folks prepare for these films?
I'll tell you, like you mentioned, that video that I made that's on our Facebook page, so
yes.
If you go to the Dayton LGBT Film Fest page on Facebook, I posted a video that tells you how to access the festival. But the festival, a pass for the festival is only $50, and that gets you all 7 screenings, gets you all 6 virtual shows, and then 2 tickets to any of the 4 in-person screenings. And it, you know, the thing is that each film, we're still kind of curating it. It always seems like it's over a weekend. It's usually a Friday to a Sunday or a Thursday night to a Sunday every other year. But this year, because of the virtual aspect, what we're doing is we're rolling out films one at a time and making those windows available for 72 hours. So opening night film on Friday night is available for 72 hours to access. But once you access it, you have 72 hours from then to finish watching it. So that first film on opening night is available from Friday night until Monday, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, till Monday late afternoon, essentially. And if you access that film anytime in that 72-hour windows, you'll still have 72 hours to finish watching it. So, and this is a parameter put on by some distributors for us to make the film available, because they don't want their films. Normally, if it was at a festival, it'd be here in-house, and you had to come to Dayton to see it, or you missed it.
Right.
Now we're making it virtually available so anyone in Ohio can see it. So they want to make sure that we are limiting those that access so that other festivals can have opportunities to screen their film, and it wouldn't have been spoiled by some other market having offered it and going too wide and too robust with their screening schedule.
And you can check out the whole schedule at DaytonLGBT.com. It's really interactive. You can see what's playing when and you can plan your kind of festival experience. Jonathan, do you think we'll get back in the theater like we used to be eventually, or do you think we're into hybrids for a few years?
I think we're stuck here for a while. I'd love for that to be different a year from now, but it's really wait and see. I think a vaccine is going to be one key player to all of this, and the accessibility of a vaccine, but I think it's going to be a while. And we kind of saw the writing on the wall months ago that was, it wasn't going to be a, lockdown for 10 days and we'll see what happens. That wasn't seeming like that was at all possible with seeing what was happening in other countries. So, we've made a lot of big changes here to keep everyone as safe as possible, and we hope that people who are up for going out will join us, and if they aren't up for going out, they can at least join us virtually.
Right, and if folks don't, if folks sign up, it's just kind of a nuts and bolts thing. If folks sign up for the festival, but they aren't going to come in person, do they let you know so you can kind of release those tickets?
Well, the tickets only get held if they click and save them. So,
okay.
Yep. So there's limited number of seats available. There are only 100 passes available. So we're at about 50 right now. So there are like 50 passes more available out there, and those would get you 2 seats for the in-person screenings as well. But right when you buy your pass, you'll be able to click when you want your in-person seats as well.
Perfect. Hey, thank you so much for coming on Out Cincinnati. I love everything going on in Dayton. It's a vibrant town, especially when you start looking around, seeing what's going on. The LGBT Film Fest, DaytonLGBT.com. Is there anything you wanted to add about the festival or just in general?
I'm just thrilled that we can share it on a little wider scale this year and let people know what we're up to here. I mean, it has been 15 years, and we're pretty proud of what we've accomplished. So thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Of course. Oh, by the way, I got a new mask today.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I posted it on Facebook. It's a print of my face.
It's a print of your face, so it looks like
me.
Looks like your face. Oh, I can't wait to see this.
I've been playing with lining my nose all afternoon. It's like Barbara Streisand. Look at me.
Are you getting strange looks? Like, how does that compare to the poop emoji mask?
People are so lame, and I would think in Florida people would say, but I was in one place and nothing. people are just like, and then they just think you're a tool. And then I was in another place, nothing. And then third place I was at, I'm like, look at my mask.
Look at me. Coming up on Out Cincinnati, activist Key Beck.
Out Cincinnati is radio for the LGBTQ community and beyond. I'm Chris.
And I'm Melissa. Out Cincinnati airs each and every Thursday at noon on Radio Artifact, WVXU-HD2, streaming live at radioartifact.com.
And I'm thrilled to welcome a local community activist, teacher, writer, and you might just see their name on the ballot in the near future. And I'm proud to call them a friend. Hello, Key Beck. Welcome to Out Cincinnati.
Hello and welcome, and thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be invited to speak with both of you.
So are you staying well? How are things going? I know things are a bit strange for everybody right now. This is like a three-way Skype call we're doing for this interview. It's weird radio. Like, how's life?
Life is going well. I will say what I'm really happy about, even doing this sort of Skype, kind of not being in the same room, is it kind of brings attention to accessibility, right? Which is one of those core things that I lead with, is that accessibility is really important. And so folks who normally may not be able to attend meetings or go places are able to connect. So I'm trying to make the best of not so good situations. So.
Right. I mean, I think I'm getting to the bottom of Netflix at this point. It's getting weird to like not see people, but yeah, it's awesome to connect this way. So you work over at Lighthouse, and we love Lighthouse. We talk a lot about what they do over there. What does Lighthouse do, and what do you do over there, just for folks who aren't aware?
Yeah, thanks for that. So Lighthouse Youth and Family Services is one of the biggest providers for working with young people specifically. But where I work is I'm actually in one of the parts of Lighthouse called Lighthouse Safe and Supported, and we are solely charged with working with LGBTQ youth homelessness. And so we do that in a number of ways, right? So one of those things that we do is we offer something called the Host Home Program, where we temporarily house young people, 18 to 24, anywhere from 3 to 6 months, and we basically help them get a place to stay so they can work on other things, other aspects of life, whether that's education or whether that's a job or a trade. We find that when you're not worrying about where you're going to sleep for the night, it tends to open up other times for you to worry about other stuff, as well as we do cultural competency training. So that what most people know of kind of like LGBTQ 101, language, terminology, as well as maybe what are some of the best practices that we can have to support our LGBTQ youth experiencing homelessness. And then we also offer a resource guide where we basically have resources for all sorts of affirming services, whether it be churches, whether it be summer camps, mental health professionals, all those things. And so those are a couple of things, as well as our Faith and Families program. We acknowledge that some parents, some caregivers may have some resistance accepting their young LGBTQ person's identity, and we help reconcile, or we work to reconcile that relationship, because we know that for some young people, they really value that connection with their family, with their caregivers. And finally, we have an LGBTQ advocate that is a partnership between us and Women Helping Women, which is basically working with survivors of LGBTQ survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, stalking, and intimate partner violence. So we do a lot of stuff at for LGBTQ youth with Safe and Supported, and it is all focused around how do we end LGBTQ youth homelessness, because it's a real problem. Upwards of 40% of the youth that experience homelessness identify as LGBTQ. So there's a real need in the community for the work that we do at Safe and Supported.
Hey, Key, it's Melissa. Just wanted to ask you, if there is someone in the community in need, how do they take advantage of the services that Lighthouse offers? Is it open to the public?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it really depends on who you are, right? So all of our services are available, potentially available to folks, depending on the program. So for the as I told you, the host home program. So, for example, there's an age requirement, 18 to 24. And then there's also a couple other mini requirements that you might need to follow. But anyone who is a LGBTQ youth experiencing homelessness in that age group can apply to be part of that program. And the same with the faith and family. So anyone who is like a parent, a caregiver, a parishioner who is trying to work to reconcile that relationship with a young LGBTQ client, they can. And finally, our safe and supported trainings are available to all service providers of youth-serving organizations. And you can either go to our website, which is safeandsupported.org lys.org/safe and supported, and you can either sign up through there, or you can reach out through one of the many avenues, either through my personal email, my work email, or you can we're connected with a lot of social service agencies. So if you are already getting services, you can always ask for a referral to Safe and Supported. And if you fit all the criteria, which I will say they are HUD criteria, so we're not exactly in charge of all of them, but it is open to anyone who qualifies for the program. So you don't have to be currently getting services. You literally can just be a young person who is facing housing instability, and you could call us up or reach out through the website, and we could do our best to kind of triage you where you need to be.
So it sounds like you've made some adjustments in your service because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So as a training specialist, how has that role changed for you during the pandemic? Do you still have, I take it you still have some in-person services, or are you just moving to do it all online?
Yeah, so the wonderful thing, which is what I brought the accessibility up for, the reason why I brought it up initially, the wonderful thing about the trainings is that we used to be limited to where we can drive in the state of Ohio, right? Because we have to think about staff and how do we send folks to do the trainings. But luckily, now that we're doing the trainings pretty much virtually all of them, you can be anywhere in the world and get this same information around best practices. So, for example, I just had someone in a training last week from Osaka, Japan, right? So now we have availability to kind of help folks get the best way to work with LGBTQ youth in different places. But if you are looking for specific programs like our host home program, those meetings partially are being done in person. And so with, of course, proper precautions, we take that very seriously at Lighthouse. And so if you are the type of person who you're looking for that host home program, when you reach out to us, we can always set up an in-person meeting with proper precautions. But if you wanted to attend the training, you generally just have to go to that website I listed earlier, and there should be a sign-up sheet, and then you can attend the training from anywhere. And so it's not just restricted to Ohio anymore. And
that's
honestly,
awesome.
I love that. Yeah, and I love that idea because there were a lot of rural communities that didn't have access to our services, and now thanks to having Zoom, we're able to kind of have that access. So I really appreciate having the virtual training. It really upped our game a little bit.
And you're listening to Out Cincinnati. We're talking with Key Beck, and I really appreciate you coming on and speaking with us. I wanted to kind of have you confirm something with me. We're talking about Lighthouse Youth Services. If, for example, you don't qualify, or there's something exactly you don't need, Cincinnati is a huge town of referrals. Folks who can help a specific situation, right?
Yeah, I think that's really important too, is there's a large consortium of organizations that are working with each other. There's a large group of folks who are doing similar work, and even if you don't qualify for our particular programs, although ours is somewhat of a low barrier, we definitely have relationships with other agencies that are youth serving that we could do either a soft handoff. And what I mean by that is we know who are doing the good jobs in the city, and so we will literally place you with someone so you're not just out there looking around. But as well as we have relationships with adult serving organizations such as the Homeless Coalition, such as other places like that. And so know that if you are LGBTQ, even if our services don't apply to you, we can always get you the resources that you need. or that resource guide is also a great place to look. We pretty much validate that folks are affirming before we put them in that resource guide. So you can pretty much assure that if they're in that resource guide, whether it's a church, whether it's a summer camp, whether it's a professional or a doctor or a therapist, that they are LGBTQ affirmative. So that partnership is essential for the work that we do in Cincinnati.
And I wanted to ask you, we were talking a lot about different services, Lighthouse's website, and then can folks look you up on Facebook? I think you're pretty out there, and not out there, but you're pretty accessible, right? So people can type in Key Beck on Facebook if they had a question for you or anything about Lighthouse might offer, if you want to maybe drop your email, like you mentioned before.
Yeah, so the best way to contact me is kbeck@lys.org. So that's K like my first name, BECK as my last name, @lys.org. And if you send me an email, we will definitely make sure to get in contact with you. But as always, if you find me on Facebook, I am very good. Work-life balance is a thing, folks. I'm very good at making sure I'll just give you my work email, and then we can continue the dialogue in that arena. But yes, it is true. I am very accessible. You will always see me working in different community organization projects. And so if you see me out on the street, although we're on radio, so you're like, what does P even look like? But if you hear about me being at an event or see me out, or even through Facebook, feel free to reach out, and then I will make sure to connect you with my work email if you didn't get that. And again, that's kbeck@lys.org.
That is perfect. And I will tell people that they can see what you look like if they flip open that Cincinnati magazine Pride edition. What was that like to be in that magazine? And then, in your view, what does the Cincinnati queer community look like? Was the magazine representative? How would you define it?
Yeah, so I think that, let me say that if you had the magazine, it was awesome, but you really want to go to the digital publication of the magazine because we have a lot more fleshed out answers, responses. But yeah, I will say that I was honored to be invited to be part of that project, the Pride edition of Cincinnati Magazine. I will say that I've been doing this work probably around 15 years, and for many of us that have been on the forefront of doing this work, some of us in that magazine, it was like our first time being recognized. So not only was I honored, but I also feel like we have some momentum now in Cincinnati, right? One of the big things, or at least two of the big things that I pushed in my piece on the magazine was, one, we need to be looking at accessibility, right? Because oftentimes when we have these conversations about the LGBTQ community, we don't think about or talk about neurodivergent people. We don't talk about wheelchair users. We don't talk about folks that have other invisible or visible disabilities. And so I think it's important that we kind of have that conversation, as well as the diversity piece, right? For too long, I think that there were certain folks within our community that we didn't feel represented. And I can honestly say that generally non-binary people, which is how I identify, non-binary people, up until recently haven't really been part of that conversation. I feel like a lot of our voices were erased, but Cincinnati Magazine did a really good job of having a diversity of cisgender, transgender, non-binary folks, people of color, people from all different income levels. So I definitely think it's a great starting point. I think we can always do better. I always say this in my trainings. I think most of us are doing a good job, or we would be fired and shut down. But I believe in continuous improvement, and I think we can always be doing a better job. So I think we could definitely highlight more voices of color within the queer community. I think we could definitely highlight more voices of trans women of color specifically, as well as LGBTQ folks who are immigrants. We don't often have those conversations as well, right? And so I think we're in a good position in society and Cincinnati in general to kind of start having those deep, intentional conversations, which I think Cincinnati Magazine, that expose was just one starting point of that conversation.
So in your life and every day as an advocate, and you train people as well, how do you go about encouraging people in the wider community to be an advocate for all members of the queer community while also focusing on issues like racism and other forms of bigotry?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, the first thing I always will say is, first we need to meet people where they are, right? I think that for some folks, if you've traditionally grown up with gender stereotypes, if you've traditionally grown up with certain representations of the LGBTQ community, it can really shade the way that you feel about LGBTQ people. And so one of the things I do is I meet them where they are. Another thing is I think we need to be more courageous and lean into our addressing our biases, addressing the prejudices that we may have, because let's be real, right? We all have an implicit bias against someone or against a group of people. That is something that is innate. We can't really help that. But what we should do, instead of shying away from it and saying things like, well, I'm not homophobic or I'm not racist, we need to acknowledge that we all can play a part in systems of oppression. And in order to kind of like analyze those stereotypes and myths, when you do that work and you meet people where they are, and when you treat the conversation with empathy, I find that people start to come around, right? So it's not about like you either believe this way or else. It's more about when you say things that are myths and stereotypes, it could lead to these consequences. And because we don't want to like lead our life with harming people, we want to make sure that we create an equitable space where everyone can talk. And so I often say that that's really what my gift is, besides talking, because it's pretty obvious, right? I think my gift is like I'm really good at meeting people where they are and then having that conversation with empathy. And I think empathy is something that we all need to flex our empathy muscle a little bit more, because it's really easy for us to just shut down in conversations. It's a lot more difficult for us to analyze where that conversation comes from, where those beliefs come from, because they come from somewhere, right? And I think that's how we start to reach a wider audience.
And we're speaking with Key Beck on OUTCincinnati. I wanted to ask you, we spoke about empathy and race and homophobia. How do you kind of, you said meet people where they are. I feel like in society we kind of have to keep relearning how to not be racist, relearning how to not be homophobic. Not us on this interview, but just folks in general. Every 10 years is like, we have to relearn empathy. Like, how can we stop that and just kind of, keep on our merry way and not have to keep fighting? I know that's a utopian question.
Yeah, and that's a great question, right? And I think, first it starts with like acknowledging the truths, right? We have to be able and have the courage to acknowledge certain truths, such as this country was built upon stolen land, because we know indigenous folks were there, right? And we can acknowledge that. We also need to acknowledge that, like, this country used black and brown bodies to create an economy, right? And these are kind of these things that we need to acknowledge. We also need to acknowledge that myths and stereotypes are some of the reasons why homophobia and transphobia exist, because people base their values of LGBTQ identities on these myths and stereotypes. These are truths that we have to come to. And I believe once we kind of come to those truths, a lot of the learning will kind of come by us looking at the data, right? So when we look at data, for example, around family rejection, we can see that almost a quarter of young people, when they come out as LGBTQ, they face outright violence or threats of violence from their parents, right? Mm-hmm, and so if we acknowledge that that's a thing, if we educate parents, hey, we're not saying you have to be in the front of the gay pride parade, but when you physically or when you threaten your child, they have higher rates of death by suicide. They have higher rates of illicit drug use. They have higher rates of sexual practices that aren't protective, right? When we kind of start talking like that, then those parents are now like, wait, hold on a second. I don't want bad things to happen to my child. I'm willing to kind of change my behavior and my values a certain way. And I think like that racial equity question can happen the same way, right? If we talk about the psychological effects of generational racism, right? When we talk about economic injustice, like when we kind of bring out those facts, people start to think, wait a second, I'm not intentionally trying to harm someone, right? And so these are things that I need to be aware of my actions, my words, my behaviors, because I don't want to intentionally harm someone. And that's when you start building that empathy within them. And then from there you say, well, what can we do instead of weaponizing things? What can we do to uplift LGBTQ people? And you keep on in that iterative process. And let me be very clear, this is not like I had this conversation once and I got rid of homophobia and transphobia. For some individuals, and not just parents, this could be service providers, this could be staff and administration. Some folks, we have to have this conversation over and over until they're starting to realize, and that empathy is starting to really work when they now take the decision of, I no longer want to harm people with my words, actions, and behaviors. I want to support people. And I find that's when you get them, and then now they can be part of that movement of reaching out to other people. And so I always talk about this idea of the ripple effect, right? I'm not trying to change a vast number of people really quickly. I'm trying to change my neighbor, and my neighbor is going to change their neighbor, and then our neighborhood is going to change together, and then our community is going to reach out to other communities. Because this has to be a collaborative movement. The LGBTQ community needs to be working with the immigrant community, needs to be working with the Black-led community, needs to be working with the women-led community. Like, we need to have more collaborations and less siloing. And that collaboration is going to build some more empathy within this cultural shift that we're trying to have.
And do you find it a struggle sometimes? Because while the community is very diverse, there are opposing factions. And how do you overcome some of that with your training and also by being empathetic, as you say?
So I think, that is really a good question, because I think part of my teachings, or part of what I talk about in my trainings is that, there are situations where the emotional labor, the physical danger is not worth it, right? And what I mean by that is, if you are trying to have a conversation with someone and you're never going to change their mind, or if you want to have a conversation with someone and maybe they're acting violently, or maybe it's a whole group of people, right? In those situations, you really need to choose your battles, right? That might not be the situation where you want to be an upstander, but maybe you have an uncle or an aunt that says slight comments about LGBTQ people, right? Or maybe you have a teacher that says something about LGBTQ folks. Meeting them one-on-one and saying, hey, when you say this word, it really makes me feel like this. So when you make assumptions about, like, gay men, for example, it really hurts my feelings, because I realize that not all gay men act that way, right? Or not all gay men ascribe to that stereotype. So I really wish we could have a more productive conversation. I think that is like the number one thing I really try to start with. But if you find that you're facing more and more opposition, you might have to go to a more structural way, meaning looking at the policies, right? So, for example, if your school has a policy around no discrimination, it may not say no LGBTQ discrimination, but what you say is the same way we treat racism, we need to treat homophobia. The same way we treat religious intolerance, we need to treat homophobia. Mm-hmm. And then that's how you start to change systems when the individual is not willing to change. But it is hard work, and this is work that I get paid to do. And I say it in that way because I know that a lot of people put their personal labor out there and they do that work, and then they get burnt out. And what I don't want folks to do is get burnt out because they're doing all this work alone, right? This is where that collaboration can come in. And so I think it's really important to always think collaboration is key, and always, well, that's kind of like my name. Collaboration is key. Yes. But also to think that, as I said earlier, this can be an iterative process that starts with one conversation, and this may take a week, a month, a year, but know that if you continue those conversations, you will have some effectiveness happening.
And what you said, Key, about changing your neighbor, and I just saw this thing on HGTV about porches and how that's how we talk to our neighbor, and it sounds silly, but it can start with that one conversation, right? It's just as simple as that. So you told me that you maybe, I saw it on Facebook, you maybe wanted to run for office. Is that a for sure thing? Are we going to see your name on the ballot?
So I am still considering, yes, running for city council. So I am slightly immunocompromised. So getting the 500 signatures, I'm thinking strategically on how to do that. But yes, okay. So what I've noticed is that there is representation that is lacking. We've only had one or two LGBTQ candidates for city council, right, that were out. I'm sure there were a lot of folks that probably weren't out, but we've only had 2 out candidates. And we are poised this year to have the most number of out candidates, the most number of out candidates of color and the most number of transgender candidates to ever run for city council. And this is momentum that I don't want to pass me by. So I am definitely trying to run. I applied to be part of the city council school. So I'm definitely putting my ducks in a row, my animals in a row to run, because I really do think that, I will bring something new, something exciting, and something that is very grassroots. I think that is something that is really strong in my heart, is that I believe there are people every day around us that we don't hear their voices, and some of those people are LGBTQ. Some of those people are people of color. Some of those people are black. Some of those people are women. And my goal is to yield space and elevate those voices so we can have one consolidated voice to say the change we want to see in the world.
So I was going to say, my next question was going to be, what's the problem you see in government now? Is it politicians just don't listen enough?
Honestly, the issue that I see in government right now, specifically in our city, is the transparency. I think that's one of the issues. I think that oftentimes, decisions are made without getting community input, and I think community input is who creates the government. I think that's one problem. I think the other problem is, and this is a real problem, right? You cannot get things passed without making concessions, sometimes concessions that you don't feel comfortable doing. And what I would love to see in a government is people who aren't afraid of doing what the people ask, even if that means that other folks who are on council with us don't agree. Even if that means that folks who are willing to contribute money to our city decide not to. And the problem with that is that we know that cities need money, and so there's always this conflict that happens between government individuals and systems. Is like, because they know they need money, they are willing to kind of like curb what they do or modify what they do. And I think that when I run, it's definitely going to be something that comes from the people, because I always will advocate with my constituency. I've done that on community council for the last 4 years, sometimes to the chagrin of my community council peers, but I will always listen to the pulse of the city. I literally go out, I ask my neighbors, I ask people, what do you think about this? And I digest it in a way that they can understand so that we all can make an informed decision together, because this government is nothing without its people.
Hey, it's just it's a building. It's an edifice. Yeah, that's amen to conversation. I wanted to kind of wrap things up with a kind of a fun question. I did see on Facebook that you posted this thing with Spotify where you're supposed to put your what you have on repeat or what you've been listening to. My question is, what have you been listening to? And I didn't do that quite yet, but I need to put that on Facebook myself. So what do you have on repeat or shuffle?
So this is going to be a very controversial decision to say. This will make or break my political views. No, not really. So first of all, I will say, so WAP, which is right now is a very controversial video with Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion. Anyone can look it up. Y'all will see the drama. So WAP by Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion is one of those things. I think also I've been really big into a young artist named Ravina. She sings the most ethereal, beautiful music, and she is one of those people who sing about heartbreak, and it's just really refreshing. That is on my playlist. And then my other top playlist, really, I've just been listening to that and Little Dragons. And nice. I feel like in this time of pandemic and crisis, sometimes you need that easy listening, that mellow kind of emotional stuff to work through some stuff. And those are probably the top 3 things. But I always put LGBTQ artists like Cakes Tequila, people like Rico Nasty. I always put like LGBTQ artists on the forefront of all my listening, because I think it's important that we give them just as many views and just as many listens to as we do major artists, because LGBTQ artists are often overshadowed by those big box music companies, and so it's our job to make sure that we're listening to them and that we're giving them notice. Oh, and Lizzo, because I'm a Lizzo. I'm a Lizzo fan forever and ever and ever. So.
Amen. And you know that LGBTQ category is not something that, unless you're part of the community or like have a family member who is, that you would normally click, but there's a lot of great music in there. So click all the categories, and thank you for suggesting that. So keep an eye out for Key's name on the ballot, and I want you to come back, keep us updated what's going on in your life, what you're doing next, and what you're going to change in Cincinnati. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me. This was a pleasure. I enjoyed talking to both of you.
Hi, this is Emily Meyer from Equality Ohio's Legal Clinic. You can find out more about our legal clinic and the services we provide and submit an intake form at equalityohio.org.
So a whole slurry of films to check out October 9th through 15th. I've got my tickets.
Yes, and I'm excited to see some more independent films and good stuff.
To see the LGBT lens, I'm going to call it that. Like, to folks ask me, what's about a film, LGBT film festival? Shouldn't the gay films be at a regular film festival? And it's like, well, it's about visibility, so get out and check it out.
The Dayton Independent Film Festival did include the LGBTQ plus genre, so I thought that was interesting. So this one is just purely focusing LGBT on the queer community, which is awesome.
Lots of good stuff. Yes.
And so, so do you have any secrets to tell, Chris? Any tea to spill about some of the films? What can you tell us?
I don't have any secrets, but I do know that I'm going to ask the festival director when I go to the in-person screening. I'm going to ask him, because there is an entire row of photos behind him in one of these pictures. He's going to think I'm such a creep, but I'm going to ask him what the coolest signed photo he has is up there. And but
cool.
No, I don't have any secrets about the movies. I'm sorry. I'm waiting for the festival to pour through.
I just want to know all your secrets. I don't even care what they're about, really. It's just
I want to get into the Neon Theater and take like a tour with you. Like,
that's the Neon Theater. I love the Neon Theater.
I've never been inside there.
Really?
And I Googled a picture of it, and I'm like, I really need to get in there. And it's totally not what I expected, but in a good way. And so the
That's
Neon
cool.
Theater, Dayton LGBT .com. And then next week we're going to talk to Jonah Yokoyama, and he is with the Heartland Trans Wellness Group, and also with Equitas. Find out what he's been up to, and also focus on what Equitas is doing in Cincinnati with their new location in
Walnut Hills, right?
Walnut Hills, yes, with PrEP. And we'll find out what PrEP is. You might have seen the commercials on TV. We'll find out more about that next week on Out Cincinnati.
Just a reminder to our listeners out there, if you would like to support Out Cincinnati, you can find out more information at our website at OUTCincinnati.com. And if you would like to email Chris...
Oh, I'm sorry. I muted mine.
You can contact him. Actually, it's for both of us. For OUTCincinnati@gmail.com. And also look us up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Thanks for being with us this week. This is Out Cincinnati, streaming live on radioartifact.com, 91.7 WVXU HD2, and at 1660 AM.